I like to believe that this series is trying to show that she could be both a victim and a perpetrator. By the end of season 2, you can tell that no one here is completely guiltless, nor is no one here all at fault. Everyone on the show is a little too complex just to put them in villain or hero sections. Even Luis himself. So while I'm summarizing the events, please be as open-minded as possible. I believe that's the best way to watch this series. If you do end up going back and watching it, which I highly recommend since I took a lot of stuff from the series outside of this video. Since I'm trying to sum up the entire plot, I missed a lot of minute details that help give more depth to the characters. You know, as recording this, I intended to use the camera for it, but that video was going 60 frames per second practically, so probably not a good idea. People who say you don't need a good camera hasn't met my camera, let's just say that. But this all started because I realized that nobody made a good summary video about the overall interview with the vampire series. The only thing I saw come close to this was that 3-minute season 1 recap. The only recap I was able to find was the 3-minute one made by the two main actors of the series. However, I was hoping to find something a little more in-depth on what I was looking for. That was the main motivation of making this video, so without further ado, let me get started. The interview with a vampire series is centered around the book of the same name made by Anne Rice. The story follows the vampire Luis de Point du Lac as he talks to an interviewer named Daniel Malloy. He does this as a way to revisit his past life and attempt to get a better understanding of himself. The series is meant to show that despite being a monster, they can still feel complex feelings and emotions, very similar to humans. The story starts off with Luis in 1910, as he's still a human and a businessman. He essentially pimps women out in a way to make money for himself. Yet when he claims to do it, he says it's not his choice and it's his only way to make money. However, I think there is a choice in every matter. Okay, maybe not every matter, but many matters, at least. And during one of his business nights, his brother, Paul, accuses him of doing sinful things because he's running a brothel. And in response to this, of course, he threatens his brother by putting a knife to his neck. He claims to do it because he wanted to keep up a front, but I feel more is that he's resentful towards Paul for the way he judges his nightly activities. And as we see throughout the series, Luis has a lot of resentment towards people for no reason sometimes, but himself. However, in this scene, when we look into the distance, we see someone watching it from the darkness, who will come to know as Lestat de Liancourt. However, at this time, Luis nor do we know he's Lestat yet. At this point, it's a good time to mention that Luis has a mother, sister, and brother, and the brother is hinted to have some mental health problems, but he refused to put him in a mental health hospital where he can get help. Oh, and his sister is getting married too. On one night, Luis goes to another brothel to meet this lady named Lily, who's a prostitute. However, it is revealed to us that he never sleeps with her because he's not interested in women, as we later find out. But at this time, when he tries to buy Lily for the night, he meets this man named Lestat. Lestat revealed that he was watching him when he put his knife to his brother's throat, and for some reason thought, yeah, I want those problems, and decided to buy a house in New Orleans just to meet him again. It is at this time we see his mind control abilities for the first time in the series. He was able to get into Luis's head as he was talking to him about why he was staying in New Orleans. At this point in the series, it seems like the more distance Luis tried to put between him and Lestat, the more Lestat closed the distance to try to be with him constantly. Eventually, Louises become not multiple Louises, as in Louise becomes Lestat's escort throughout New Orleans. Somewhere around this time, Louise eventually introduced Lestat to his family. Everyone took kindly to him at first, except for Paul, because he quickly realized that Lestat doesn't really give his life to God as much as Paul wants him to. And when confronted about this, Lestat uses his powers to get into Paul's head and talk about how God left him when he needed him most. This prompts Louise to get upset at Lestat and end the dinner early. But this was still far from the last time they were going to see each other. Eventually, when Louise goes to meet Lily again, he finds Louise, not two Louises again, Lestat, there. This is a scene where it's revealed that Louise has never slept with Lily once. And this is a time where Louise first sleeps with Lestat, and Lestat drinks Louise's blood. It turns out Louise was not okay with that part, and essentially goes to Lestat for a little bit of time. However, it's debated whether it was the blood drinking or him sleeping with another man is what caused him to let go of Lestat and be resentful. But pick your choice. After this, he goes to his sister's wedding, and after this wedding, him and his brother go on a rooftop to talk to each other and watch the sunrise. But anyway, when I was talking, he claimed he ate too much checkered cake and jumped off the rooftop and killed himself. Luis may not realize it, but this will change his life drastically from the next upcoming 100 years or so. After his brother dies, his mother blames him and during the funeral leaves with someone else. His sister claims she doesn't blame him, but she has to go and take care of the mother and her husband. Luis, in a fit of grief and rage, decides to go and find Lily. However, he finds out at this moment that Lily is dead. I forgot to mention that Lestat is still in his head calling to him at this moment, and even tried to interrupt the funeral to get to talk to him. Louise, after hearing about Lily's death, finally put two and two together and realized that Lestat is a murderer. In a fit of panic, he goes to church for probably one of the first times in his life and confesses to the priest in a confessional that he has laid with the devil. Not only did he lay with the devil, that he sold young women's bodies to make a profit. It is at this moment that Lestat comes and kills the priest. Louise tries to fight back, but Lestat easily pushes him off of him. This causes Lestat to go on a soliloquy about how God wasn't there for him and that his belief in God is what makes him weaker, essentially saying he's hurting himself and ruining himself. When another priest walks in, Lestat chooses to kill him too by shoving his literal fist through his face. He goes back to a scared Louise on the altar and claims that he loves him and that he can give him a dark gift so they can spend the rest of their lives together. However, he fails to mention that if he says no, he's probably going to kill him. So was it really much of a choice at this point? Louis, of course, says yes and becomes a vampire himself at this time. Lestat takes Louis to a bar and lets him kill someone for the first time. However, after doing this gruesome feeding, he has a moment of clarity where he realizes he is indeed a monster.
You don't like the blood, you suck it.
Yes. Yes, that's better. Good.
And in this moment of clarity, he runs into the sunlight for some reason and ends up burning nearly to death. Also, let the record show that Lestat did not tell Louise about this at any point in time. Don't you think that you deserve to be informed that if you're going to be a vampire for the rest of your life, that you should not be able to walk in the sun? However, when Louise comes back, Lestat is very dismissive in the way he's reacting and just tell him to climb into the coffin. From here on out, we see Louise try to get used to being a vampire at times. Like, for example, keeping familiar attachment, even though Lestat told him it was a bad idea, and we later learned that it indeed was a bad idea. However, fast forward, when Luis is talking to a white businessman again, he is able to read his thoughts and can tell that he has racial and prejudiced thoughts about him for being black. And instead of ignoring it, he decides to kill him in the property. This, of course, makes Lestat upset because it was a preemptive killing that could have exposed them. However, Luis couldn't care less and claimed that he was insensitive to what he was going through. But Lestat ended up coming back and making it up to him by helping him buy his new business.
I don't like sleeping angry.
Well, what can I do to make it up to you?
I want to buy the Fair Play Saloon.
That's ambitious.
If you don't want to help, I'll do it myself.
Ridiculous of you to mix human and vampire business. It always ends poorly. But how can I stop you?
Which was basically just another brothel and bar. Now we should be in the 1920s, where he's running his business and living lavishly. In one of these moments, he ends up almost killing his baby nephew when meeting his sister for one of the first times after turning into a vampire. And of course, he runs away and has a mental breakdown over the fact he almost killed his family. Lestat, of course, being himself, his compassionate self, he doesn't care and say they should get ready for a soap opera. When they go see the show, we see a good example of Luis's and Lestat's power imbalance in the relationship, where Luis has to pretend to be a worker while Lestat is the aristocrat that he's escorting to his seat. When watching the play, Lestat is disappointed by the male's performance and decides that he's going to kill him. Because, of course, Luis confronts Lestat about how wrong this ideology is, and Lestat yells at him,
But I don't say that you have to enjoy it! Kill them swiftly!
and that he should embrace just being a vampire and a monster. I mean, he's not completely wrong, but come on now. However, after this, Luis decided he's going to eat rats from now on because he can't bear the idea of killing people again. And just FYI, if you're not eating humans, vampires become weak and, in Luis's case, lose libido. And he blames his loss of libido for Lestat eventually going to Antoinette, his mistress. However, I don't think it's Luis's libido that ruined it. I think Lestat is just Lestat. And Lestat wants to eat his cake, wants to make his cake and eat it too. In this infamous scene, when they burn a dead body, Luis asks, it just so happens during around this time, Luis meets one of his old friends who are also questioning their sexuality. and they eventually go to the wood and do sections together. Not very safe for work things together. However, when finding this out, Lestat doesn't first act mad. He seems just as regular, cheerful self as normal. However, one day, Lestat invited military officers into the house, claiming he thought they were Luis's type. And when Luis told him to get rid of them, he did get rid of them by using mind control, this is where we learn he can mind control multiple people at one time. Very important. This is when Luis justifiably confronts Lestat for not being okay, even though he said he was okay with Luis sleeping with other people. And then we get one of my favorite scenes I still like to quote to this day.
I heard your heart stamping!
You watched the whole thing like some creeper.
And then I watched you pull over and drain a dog and run down an alleyway for 2 more rats! This is not a life!
That's because you took my life!
On top of this, he's constantly losing his business because of a new law put in place that prevents black businesses from prospering. And now that he can read minds, he can read all the minds of the businessmen at the table and realize that all of them really never liked him or much cared about him and prefer to see him fail because they're racist, of course. So Luis does what Luis does best, gets mad and kills someone. And when he kills one of these businessmen, he puts him on display by saying, "Whites not allowed." Of course, the people retaliated since you can't just kill a high-level man like him out of nowhere. This causes Luis's business to get burned down, where he was able to find a 14-year-old girl at the place, and saves her the only way he knows how to. This should be around the 1930s, and this is where we insert Claudia. Luis ends up taking Claudia to Lestat so that he can turn her into a vampire just like them. Lestat was apprehensive at first, but eventually gave in. We learn around this time that people who are made by the same master can read each other's minds. However, the master cannot read their minds. Claudia around this time, or at least at the beginning, was happy at first, seeing the two men together as father figures, often referring to Luis as Daddy Lou. And even though she likes Luis, she likes killing people like Lestat does. Throughout this episode, we see Claudia grow up and become more aware of the feelings that she has. At this point, she started mentally becoming more of a grown woman, but still in the body of a 14-year-old girl. This causes a lot of problems in her romance and social life. However, at some point, she was able to meet a guy she liked that was able to go on a date with her, and realized she just wasn't 14. And when they're about to get down and dirty, she accidentally drinks all of his blood and kills him. She ends up taking the dead body to Lestat and Luis, and told Lestat to bring him back to life, which he couldn't because you can't bring back someone who's already dead. While burning his body, Lestat forces Claudia to watch. This causes Claudia to be unhappy as she constantly tries to find the second person that she wants in her life. Since Luis and Lestat have always been together, she's kind of the third wheel in their relationship. Eventually, Luis and Lestat find out that Claudia has been killing people, a lot of people, and trying to hide their dead bodies in the Mississippi River. On top of killing people, she has tried to turn other people into vampires too, which never worked out. Oh yeah, and she sometimes likes to keep souvenirs of said dead people. This of course makes them mad because now they can be exposed at this point. Now that everybody's finding those dead bodies in the river, it makes them look suspicious. However, Lestat was quick to say that this was Lisa's problem and that he needed to fix it. Claudia tells Lestat to make her someone, and Lestat replies with, "You see, we saw you turn out. We're not going to do this again." And during this argument, Claudia reveals that Lestat is still seeing Antoinette, even though it was mentioned that he wasn't supposed to see Antoinette anymore after the last fight they had. When confronted with this, Lestat said he's going to kill her quickly, and Luis says, "Don't bother," as he walks out to find Claudia after she ran off. We see Claudia packing her stuff as she leaves and blames Luis for turning her wild when she was a 14-year-old girl, claiming how she wanted to live a life and live an adult life. This is when Claudia leaves for 7 years. Claudia leaves to Europe to go find more vampires where she heard they were at some point. And during the 7-year trip, Claudia ended up finding one of those vampires with a motorbike jacket on. And let's just say it did not end well, and it ended up with her being severely traumatized throughout the series. The series hints to it being after going through this trauma, she eventually comes back home. Now, while she was gone, Luis and Lestat's relationship has been non-existent, as Luis has been obsessed with trying to find Claudia again, while Lestat is just bored with the fact that Luis doesn't entertain him anymore. He is not only upset about that, but he's upset about the fact that Luis seems to put Lestat second to Claudia. So of course, Lestat doesn't kill Antoinette and keeps seeing her constantly. However, Claudia returns after seeing Luis' family, at least the last of his family, leave him, and realizes that she's all he has. However, she reveals when she comes back that she's not back here to be with Lestat again. She wants to take Luis and leave Lestat permanently. And Luis starts thinking about it. And in this moment of fear, Lestat starts attacking Claudia. Because more than anything, Lestat does not want to be alone. This causes Luis to fight Lestat too. And this tussle that ends up breaking their home. And at the same time, Luis ends up getting beaten to a bloody pulp, to say the least. However, keep this scene in mind from now. While Claudia is begging Lestat to stop, he ends up bringing Luis's body, and he rises up 2 kilometers above the ground. And in the sentimental scene, he tells Luis to at least tell him that does he love him, and he won't drop him. And Luis doesn't give him a straight answer, leaving Lestat to drop from said 2 kilometers.
A great deal to hear that from your lips. Your quivering, hateful lips.
Let go of me!
Anything for you.
This ended up bedridden Luis for 3 months. Claudia stayed the entire time with him and helped him heal, and make sure to give him rats to eat since he doesn't drink human blood. Lestat leaves for a bit and eventually comes back to apologize to Luis. However, Luis nor did Claudia want to hear about it. No matter what he bought or gave to Luis, he wasn't budging. But we all know Luis's armor isn't as strong as he thinks it is. Eventually, by giving him a CD, Luis takes Lestat back. And in a fit of compromise, Claudia started laying down some ground rules, saying that he cannot be her father figure anymore and has to be more of a brother or sister kind of relationship. And that he also needs to kill Antoinette. And last but not least, tell them of his past finally, because he never mentioned his maker once before. We didn't get much information about his maker, but so far we know is that his maker made him, locked him away, and eventually threw himself into the fire in front of Lestat. Lestat, of course, agrees to these terms. However, he doesn't really kill Antoinette. He made it look like he killed her, but then went to go lay in the bed with her the next day after. Claudia was infuriated when finding this out. Luis had a very nonchalant way of seeing about it. It seems to me that Luis has become less angry and more on the press side now. And this very much frustrates Claudia, who's trying to make it work with Luis. And eventually, Luis tells her that she should take the next train and leave. Oh, and that she doesn't need to worry about him anymore. That it's gonna be fine. However, after getting on this train and having a small sense of relief and freedom, the train stops. And it's revealed that Lestat killed the train conductor. He walks up to a panicked Claudia as he explains the situation. He reveals that Luis needs Claudia to help him get out of the depression state he's in right now. And while he's talking to Claudia, by giving her a taste of freedom and letting her have her cage, just to only lead her right back into the cage. This makes Claudia realize that there's no way out, and the only way out is to kill Lestat. After the train situation, we see how the relationship continues to deteriorate. Everybody resents each other, yet they're stuck to be with each other because Lestat doesn't want to be alone. This is what I like to call the Mardi Gras Party Massacre. This is the plan that Claudia makes up so that she can kill Lestat for once and for all, and her and Luis can leave finally. Claudia and Luis plan this massacre telepathically to each other. Claudia tells Luis just to focus on falling in love with Lestat and keeping him distracted, while she handles everything else. Around this time, the townspeople have started to realize that they're not aging, and believe that this is the work of the devil, and that they're Satanist worshippers. So before they leave, Luis and Claudia decided to convince Lestat to have the Mardi Gras party for the year. And while buying the rights for the party, one of the businessmen gave some snide remarks to Lestat, which caused him to side-eye him, kind of. You'll eventually see why this is very important. Before this party starts, Claudia tells Luis telepathically that she's going to buy poison and put it into one of their victims, specifically the twin. For the Mardi Gras massacre, they had all decided to fast for 3 days and decided to choose a very select few individuals to stay after the party so they can kill them and feast, essentially. During the party, Lestat and Luis have a very passionate dance and eventually end in them kissing in public, despite being gay, technically being against the law. This causes Luis to have second thoughts. However, Claudia already put the poison in a twin. After the party, they have this scene where they finally tell what their true ages are. Luis is 65, Claudia is 35, while Lestat is 264. After revealing this, they proceed to kill everyone at the party, Lestat attacking the man who gave him a snide remark earlier. And after this aura farming killing incident, they decided to leave the last twin for Lestat. Right before Lestat started drinking the blood, he started sniffing it and starts wondering what that smell is. This is when Antoinette comes back onto the scene to show that she's a newfound vampire, and Lestat had turned into one so that they can spy on Luis and Claudia. This ends up in a minor fight that causes them to try to kill Claudia by making her drink the blood. However, it's Lestat that's the one that becomes sick and drops to his knees. This gives Claudia enough time to fight back against Antoinette and kill her instead. She reveals to Lestat and Luis that she poisoned the man that gave him the snide remark because she knew that Lestat is very petty.
Him?
Always the petty slights with you, Uncle Les.
And watched him lie there dying. And Claudia took a pen, dabbed the tip in his blood, and proceeded to write Lestat's final words. "Put me in the coffin, Louis, Louis." However, when push came to shove, Luis did not burn Lestat's body, only burning Antoinette's, despite Claudia wanting to burn both just to be sure. The interviewer, who haven't brought up much this time around, had brought up a good point that if they didn't burn Lestat's body, there's a chance that he could come back by drinking rat's blood, since it takes a lot to kill a vampire as old as him. Luis and Claudia leave New Orleans, and the series ends showing present time Luis with his new boyfriend, Armand. But overall, that's what happened in season 1. I know there's a lot of things I left out, because I'm trying to summarize 8 hours into 30 minutes. That's why I highly recommend you watch the series anyway. But if you're like me and watched season 1 so long ago you can't remember it, similar to me, and you're excited for season 3 Vampire Lestat season, then this video is perfect for you. I might make a season 2 recap video if I feel like it, but a like and subscribe can definitely help motivate me. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!